A mother, weak from hunger, but driven by love, making a desperate choice. A stray dog, struggling to survive, gathers her tiny cubs and brings them to a stranger's yard, hoping for a miracle. What happens next is beyond heartwarming. It's a story of survival, compassion, and an unbreakable bond. Stay with us till the end to witness this incredible journey. A mother's love is one of the strongest forces in the world, and for this brave dog, survival wasn't just about her. It was about her puppies. She had been wandering the streets for days, searching for food, her body growing weaker with every passing hour. The once thick fur that protected her was now thin and patchy, her ribs visible beneath her skin. Yet even as hunger gnawed at her, she refused to give up. She had little mouths to feed, and giving in to exhaustion was not an option. Life for a stray dog is filled with uncertainty. Each day is a battle against hunger, thirst, and the constant threat of danger. She had seen the cruelty of the world, people shooing her away, cars speeding past without a second glance, and the cold loneliness that came with being unwanted. But she also knew that her puppies depended on her. Their tiny bodies trembled against her, their cries soft but desperate. They didn't understand the world yet, but they knew one thing. Their mother was their only source of warmth, comfort, and survival. With no food and no safe place to shelter her little ones, she had to make a choice. She could keep wandering, hoping to find scraps of food in the garbage, or rely on the kindness of strangers, something that had failed her too many times before. Or she could take a risk, trust her instincts, and search for a place where they might finally find help. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, she spotted something. A yard, enclosed but open enough for her to enter. The scent of humans lingered in the air, but unlike other places, this one felt different. It wasn't filled with the usual noises of barking dogs chasing her away or angry voices commanding her to leave. It was quiet, peaceful, and in that moment, it felt like a glimmer of hope. Carefully, she nudged her puppies forward, her heart pounding. Every step was a decision. Stay or turn back, risk it all or keep searching. But something inside her told her to keep going. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe, just maybe, it was a mother's intuition, leading her toward a miracle. She hesitated at the edge of the yard, looking around cautiously, her body tensed, ready to protect her puppies if needed. But there was no immediate danger, no one rushing out to chase her away. The ground was soft, the air warmer than the streets she had known. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Then, a sound, a door creaking open. Her body stiffened as she turned to see a human standing there, eyes wide with surprise. This was the moment she had feared. Would they chase her away like the others? Would they see her and her puppies as a burden? For a moment, there was silence. Then, something unexpected happened. The person didn't yell, didn't wave their arms, or stomp their feet. Instead, they stood still, watching. The mother dog met their gaze, her eyes pleading without words. She wasn't there to cause trouble. She wasn't there to beg for herself. She was there because she had no other choice. The stranger disappeared inside for a moment, and when they returned, they were holding something, a bowl filled with food. The scent of it hit her nose, and for the first time in days, her instincts battled against her cautious nature. Hunger won. She took a step forward, then another, until she was close enough to eat. The first bite was hesitant, as if she couldn't believe it was real. The next bite was faster, and soon she was eating like she hadn't in weeks. Her puppies, too young to eat solid food yet, huddled close, sensing that, at least for now, they were safe. The human watched, saying nothing but offering something more powerful than words: kindness. That night, the mother dog lay down for the first time in a long while, feeling something she hadn't felt in ages: hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. The homeowner had no idea that their evening was about to take an unexpected turn. Stepping outside to check on something, they stopped abruptly, eyes locking onto the sight before them. A frail dog, her body thin and worn, standing at the edge of the yard with the small cluster of tiny, helpless puppies huddled at her feet. The sight alone was enough to stir something deep within, a mix of surprise, sadness, and an unspoken understanding. The mother dog stood still, her body tense yet hopeful, as if waiting for a reaction. Would she be chased away, just like before? Would the door slam shut, forcing her to find yet another place to go? But there was something different about this moment. The human did not yell. They did not move aggressively. Instead, they simply observed, their expression shifting from shock to concern. The puppies, barely a few weeks old, shivered from the cold, their small bodies pressed close together for warmth. They didn't know the fear their mother carried. They didn't understand the risks she had taken to bring them here. All they knew was that they were hungry, and their mother was their only source of comfort. After a long pause, the homeowner turned and disappeared inside the house. The mother dog didn't move, her muscles still tight with uncertainty. Then, after a few moments, the door opened again. This time, the human held something, a bowl filled with food, the scent of it drifting through the air. The mother dog's instincts screamed at her to be cautious. She had been offered food before, only to be met with cruelty moments later. But hunger was a powerful force, and she could feel the weakness in her legs, the exhaustion in her body. She looked at her puppies, knowing she had to stay strong for them. Then, cautiously, she took a small step forward. The human knelt down, placing the bowl gently on the ground before stepping back, giving the dog space. There was no threat, no attempt to grab her or scare her away, just patience. The mother dog hesitated only a moment longer before finally lowering her head to eat. The first bite was slow, testing, but as the food filled her mouth, she could no longer hold back. She ate desperately, as if she had been starving for weeks, which in truth, she had. The homeowner watched in silence, their heart aching at the sight. It was clear this dog had been through a lot. The way her ribs showed through her thin coat, the way she constantly glanced up between bites as if expecting the food to be taken away, it all told a story of struggle. But here she was, putting aside her own fears for the sake of her little ones. A few moments later, after finishing her meal, the mother dog stepped back and immediately turned her attention to her puppies, checking them, nudging them closer to her. It was as if she was reassuring them, letting them know that for now, they were okay. The human couldn't ignore what was happening. They had seen stray dogs before, of course, but never one who had come so boldly, bringing her babies along as if seeking help. It was as if she had chosen this yard, this person, hoping for a chance. And how could anyone turn away a mother so desperate to protect her young? A decision was made in that moment. The mother and her puppies would not be chased away. They would not be left to fend for themselves. Instead, they would be given a safe place, even if just for a little while. The homeowner carefully placed a blanket in a corner of the yard, creating a soft space for the small family. The mother dog watched, but did not move immediately. She was still wary, still unsure. But as the night air grew colder and her puppies whimpered, she made her choice. Slowly, cautiously, she led them to the blanket, circling around them before finally lying down. The stranger stood at a distance, watching the mother settle in, her puppies curling up against her warm body. For the first time in a long while, she was not alone, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe, just a little, that maybe things were about to change. The days that followed were filled with quiet, cautious steps toward trust. The mother dog remained wary, her protective instincts sharp, but something in her eyes had changed. She no longer looked just desperate. There was a flicker of hope. The stranger, who had welcomed her into their yard, continued to leave food and fresh water, always keeping a respectful distance. They understood that trust wasn't something that could be forced. It had to be earned. And for a dog that had likely known nothing but struggle, it would take time. Each morning as the sun rose, the mother dog would lift her head, ears perked, waiting to see if the kindness she had received the day before would continue. And it did. A bowl of food was placed a few feet away, never too close to make her feel trapped, but near enough to show that this place, this human, was different. She would wait a moment, glance at her puppies, then cautiously approach. The first few times, she ate quickly, always looking up between bites as if expecting it to be taken away. But slowly, day by day, she began to relax. Her puppies, too young to understand fear, started to explore their new surroundings. At first, they barely moved from their mother's side, their tiny legs wobbly and weak. But as their bellies filled and their bodies grew stronger, curiosity took hold. They tumbled over each other, playfully nipping at their mother's tail, their small yips filling the air. The sight was something the stranger had not expected, such innocence in a world that had been so cruel to their mother. One day, something remarkable happened. The mother dog, after finishing her meal, did not immediately retreat to her corner. Instead, she stood still, her eyes locking onto the human who had been helping her. For the first time, there was no tension in her body, no sign that she was ready to flee at the slightest movement. Then, ever so carefully, she took a step forward. It was small, almost hesitant, but it was a step toward trust. The stranger did not move, did not reach out too quickly. They simply sat down, allowing her to come at her own pace. The mother dog sniffed the air, her ears twitching as she assessed the situation. And then, as if making a decision that had taken days to form, she lowered her head slightly, a silent acknowledgement that she no longer saw this human as a threat. It was a moment of quiet understanding, a bridge being built between two souls who had once been strangers. The mother dog was not just surviving anymore. She was learning that kindness could exist in a world that had often denied it to her. With her puppies growing stronger, the homeowner knew the next step was ensuring their health. A trip to the vet was necessary, but it had to be done carefully. The mother dog had come so far, but trust was still fragile. A sudden action could make her retreat, undoing all the progress that had been made. So the approach was slow and patient. A soft blanket was placed nearby, a gentle invitation rather than a forceful act. After a few more days of building trust, the mother dog finally allowed herself to be gently lifted, her body tense but not resisting. The puppies, bundled carefully, remained close to her as they were taken to the vet for a checkup. The results were as expected. Malnourishment, dehydration, and exhaustion had taken a toll, but there was no irreversible damage. With proper care, the little family had a real chance at a healthy future. When they returned to the yard, something had shifted. The mother dog no longer hesitated when her caretaker approached. She no longer flinched at the sound of a soft voice speaking to her. And then one afternoon, in the warmth of the sun, she did something she had never done before. She wagged her tail. It was not exaggerated or eager, just a slow, gentle movement, as if she was still figuring out what it meant to express joy. But to the stranger who had been watching over her, it was everything. It was proof that love, patience, and kindness had given this dog something she had never known before, a reason to trust. And so, the little family, once weak and uncertain, continued their journey toward healing. The mother dog no longer had to fight alone. She had found a place where she and her puppies could rest, grow, and for the first time, truly feel safe. The transformation that had taken place over the past few weeks was nothing short of incredible. What began as a desperate act, a mother dog bringing her puppies to a stranger's yard in search of help, had turned into a story of trust, healing, and second chances. The once starving dog, whose body had been frail and exhausted, was now stronger. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now held something different: gratitude. Her puppies, who had barely been able to move when they arrived, were now full of life. They ran around the yard, their tiny tails wagging, their playful barks filling the air. They no longer curled up in fear, no longer shivered from hunger or cold. Instead, they explored their surroundings with curiosity, knowing that they were safe. Their mother still watched over them closely, but she too had changed. She no longer flinched at every sound. She no longer hesitated before accepting food. She had finally realized that she didn't have to be afraid anymore. The homeowner, who had once been a stranger to this little family, had now become their guardian. What started as a simple act of kindness, offering food and shelter, had turned into something far more meaningful. The mother dog had gone from a stray fighting to survive to a beloved companion who knew what it meant to be cared for. One afternoon, as the sun cast a golden glow over the yard, something truly special happened. The mother dog, who had always kept a small distance, slowly approached the person who had saved her. Her steps were cautious but sure, her eyes filled with trust rather than fear. And then for the first time, she gently pressed her head against their hand. It was a silent but powerful moment, her way of saying, "Thank you." The puppies, unaware of the significance of this act, continued playing around their mother's feet, their joy infectious. But for the homeowner, that simple touch meant everything. It was proof that love and patience had broken through the walls of fear that had once surrounded this dog's heart. As time passed, the question of what would happen next became clearer. The little family had found a home here, and there was no question that they belonged. The idea of taking them to a shelter or finding them another place was no longer even a thought. They had already found where they were meant to be. The mother dog had spent her life struggling to survive, always moving, always unsure if she and her puppies would make it another day. But now, for the first time, she didn't have to worry. She didn't have to fight for scraps, search for shelter, or fear the world around her. She had a warm place to sleep, food to eat, and most importantly, she had someone who cared. Her puppies, full of energy and love, would grow up knowing safety instead of fear. They would never have to experience the harshness of the streets. They would never have to wonder where their next meal would come from. They had been given a second chance at life, and they would grow up knowing what it meant to be loved. This story is more than just about one dog and her puppies. It's a reminder of the power of kindness. So often, we walk past stray animals without thinking twice, assuming that someone else will help. But what if that one small act of compassion could change everything? For this mother dog, a single moment of kindness changed her entire world. It gave her a future she never thought possible. And in return, she gave back something just as powerful: her trust, her love, and a story that reminds us all that even the smallest gestures can mean everything to someone in need. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to look around. There are so many animals out there, just like this mother dog, hungry, scared, and waiting for a chance. Sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to help. If you believe every animal deserves love, leave a heart in the comments.